Thanks for joining us. Our weekly look back at the great drivers, teams, cars, characters, and tough guys in open wheel racing. We focus a lot on the winners and the champions and the guys that the near misses at Indy, whatever. But today we're going to talk about a guy that wasn't a champion and he wasn't a winner in the statistical sense. But he was a winner in the sense that I've never met anybody like Phil Krueger. He just embodied the spirit of the Indianapolis 500. Now, the first time I ever heard of Phil Krueger was 1981. He was driving a 1972 Eagle, one hell of a lot faster than it probably had any chance going. He had 2 laps at 186 miles an hour, pounded the third turn wall, knocked him out, broke his ribs, broke his shoulder, put him in the hospital. And you're thinking, this guy's got a 9-year-old car and he almost qualifies for the Indy 500. Where did he come from? Well, he grew up in Santa Monica, ran Formula Fords. He started coming to team lunch with us in the early 80s. We found out he was a good mechanic, and his big goal in life is going to make the Indy 500. He's driven to make the Indianapolis 500. Well, 84, he might have had a chance, but they had a fire truck backed over his body work in Gasoline Alley. So by the time they got it fixed, the last day of qualifying got rained out. Then he goes to Michigan, has a terrible crash at Michigan, knocks him out. He's in the hospital for a couple of weeks. So you're starting to think, okay, here's a guy that's never going to make it. He tries hard. We really like him. He's got great spirit. He's a hell of a mechanic. He's a hell of a hard worker. But he's never going to get a good enough car to make the Indy 500. He's just going to be one of those guys. In 1986, he takes a year-old car and qualifies for his first Indianapolis 500. And we're all thinking, that's perfect. It's made his life's complete. It can't get any better than this. Oh, but it did. In 1988, Kent Baker had a show car, but Krueger and his buddy Dave McLaren talked him into taking that show car and getting it ready for the Indy 500. Now you got to remember, in 1988, IndyCar racing was starting to become a big business. More and more big sponsors, more and more big teams. The little guys are falling by the wayside. But not only did Phil Krueger get that car ready, he qualified 15th for the 1988 Indy 500. Before the race, he was named the Clint Bronner Award for Mechanical Achievement because he was his own chief mechanic that year, just like Steve Chassis was. I think they were the last 2 guys that made the Indy 500 as their own chief mechanics. And then Phil runs all day and finishes 8th. And you've never seen more people happy for the guy that finished 8th than you did Phil Krueger. There was as many people around him as there was Rick Mears at the end of the race because they all realized what an accomplishment it was and how hard he worked and how much courage and heart it took to do what he did. 1989, he has a horrible crash at Michigan again. He's in a coma for 11 days. It almost kills him. He has to learn how to walk and talk again. And that's the end of his IndyCar racing career. But the guy's a pilot. He built his own airplane. He's thankfully survived a couple crashes in that. So I'll just tell you this. I've never met anybody that was braver on the ground or in the air than Phil Krueger was. But I've never met anybody that was more determined, more driven. He kind of embodied that spirit that made the Indianapolis 500 what it is. And then in those days when any possibility was the possibilities were endless with a guy like Phil Krueger because nobody believed in Phil Krueger but him. And he was determined he was going to make the Indy 500. He made it twice under his own terms as his own mechanic. And you know what? He wasn't a bad race driver either. He just never had anything that was approaching it. I don't think he probably ever had a test day in his life, but he was one of those guys that was a tough guy and kind of a hero for a lot of us because he did something a lot of people tried to do, but he followed through like few people could. Made the Indy 500 twice, and is just one of the great characters I ever met in racing. And he's still kicking today, and we're happy to call him our friend. Stay tuned to RACER.com this week. Read Marshall Pruitt, Mark Glendenning, myself. Next week we're going to talk about good Christmas presents on our RACER video of the week. Thanks for watching.